I am live. Like I promised you guys, I would start doing my live teammate talks podcast again on Saturdays. I'm about an hour late starting from where I should be because our leadership team, which is a phenomenal team, I got to shout out to them. Our leadership team is out in Newcastle, Oklahoma at the Red, White, and Blue Fest at the Veterans Park. So if you want to go out there, win some swag, they got bracelets, they got frisbees, they got all kinds of stuff. Make sure you go out there and visit them. I could not be more grateful or appreciative to have the staff that I have. They are absolutely incredible, right? But I don't have a lot of time because I got a capoeira class coming up in a little bit. So I wanted to talk today about, are you a minion? That's my question. In other words, are you the type of person that tends to just follow stuff everyone else says because they say it and you don't feel like speaking up? Or are you the type of person that can say no and set boundaries and speak your opinion in a healthy way? See, there's was some studies done on this that make it really interesting. I'm gonna get into all that in a minute, right? But first, that's what I'm asking. I'm asking, are you more of a minion? Are you more of a follower? Or do you have no problem speaking up, speaking your mind, and setting boundaries? Because I feel like that stuff is really, really important, especially when it comes to critical thinking, which is one of the things that I really hope I can impact as many people as possible about is critical thinking skills. So yes, I teach martial arts and parkour, but trust me, what I teach and my program is way more than just how to fight, how to defend yourself, or how to do flips and tricks. They're going to learn that along the way, but I always make sure that I wrap everything in character development and stuff like that because I don't want to tell them who to be or how to be, but I do want to help people learn how to rebuild their critical thinking skills. So I don't know if you've ever seen my little short video running around on YouTube and different places about it. It's one of my favorite videos I ever made. Basically says that if you take your opinion from somebody else and just regurgitate it without doing actual research into the topic, then you cannot be a critical thinker. You're not a critical thinker if you never question your own opinion and whether it's right or not. You're not a critical thinker if you don't know the downsides to your own opinion or the cons to what's happening. You just can't be a critical thinker. And when you're like that, if when I run into people like that, which by the way is like 80% of adults that I run into, when I run into people like that, you automatically kind of lose my respect, right? If you can't articulate your ideas and articulate your thoughts in new ways that other people I haven't heard other people do before, then that's an immediate red flag for me, especially if you're just regurgitating headlines that I've seen elsewhere, right? That is a huge red flag for me that you have a struggle with critical thinking or understanding what it is. So let's break it down, right? Critical, to be critical. It's kind of like to pick on something, right? To question its authority, to question its authenticity. That is to be critical about something. So to be a critical thinker is someone who has no problem questioning authority, who has no problem questioning authenticity or honesty or truthfulness about something. And that's what I really want to talk about today, which is why I'm asking, are you a minion? Do you tend to just follow and repeat the same opinions as if they're your own that you hear from the people around you? Or do you really look at things, look at both sides of a situation, look at what different people have to say about it, think about it, and then form your own opinion on it? Because I have found that probably fewer than 20% of adults I meet actually have the skill to do this. Instead, they like to read their favorite headlines, they read their favorite articles, or they listen to friends and family talk, and they go, well, because dad thinks this way, then I think this way. Because my uncle thinks this way, then I think this way. You see what I'm saying? And that leads to something known as the agentic mind state. I don't know if you guys ever heard of the agentic state. It's a really scary concept. Okay, it's terrifying. But fact of the matter is, I cannot remember the exact statistical numbers. You can look it up. But they did several studies on the agentic state, and it was way north of 50% of people, when they thought they were being told to do something by authority, would do something they knew was wrong or immoral. But people did it anyway because someone else told them to do it. Someone they thought that it was an authority told them to do it. There was actually a documentary about the agentic state not that long ago. It was kind of a movie documentary. You guys should check it out. I don't remember the name of it. But essentially what it is they would take everyday people, right, and they would put them in a chair in front of a bunch of switches. These switches would be increased electrical shocks. About halfway up the switchboard, they would tell you that switch is a lethal electric shock. Anything past that is beyond lethal. Then they would sit a guy in a chair in another room. Now, that guy was just a plant. Nothing was actually happening to him. He was just an actor. But then the people that were being tested, they would be asked to read questions to the person in the room, in the chair. And every time that person got a question wrong, they would have to give them a higher electric shock for every wrong answer. all the way up to and past what they knew to be a lethal shock, right? I might be boring. Sorry, Montague. That's just too bad. You head out. So the interesting part about this is well north of 70% of people, even when it got to the dangerous electric shock, right? Like life-threatening electric shock, they still did it. They didn't refuse, even though it was wrong and immoral and a terrible thing to do and even illegal. They still went ahead and did it because an authority told them to, because someone standing there in a doctor's coat told them to. Now that is known as the agentic mind state. In other words, I don't know enough about what's happening to make up my own mind, so I'm going to let someone else make up my mind for me so that I don't have to feel guilty later about any negative consequences. I can always blame the authority, right? And this is something that I struggle with because when I was a kid, I always questioned authority. I questioned teachers all the time. Yes, I got into some trouble over it and things like that, but it's something I'm proud of to this day. And it's something that I try to instill in my own son and I try to instill into my students. I tell them all the time, question what I say, question what I show you, test it for yourself because it's you that ultimately has to decide whether you can figure out how to use it well or not. And everything I teach can be used well, but different people are going to find different things work better for them. And so they've got to test these things, try these things, train these things before they can figure that stuff out. And then they have to think critically on it. If every time I try to use this, it ends up working against me, then think critically about what's being used against you and how you can prevent that next time by using better tactics or better setups or whatever when it involves the martial arts side of things, right? So the agentic state is something that can be very dangerous. It can lead to where you have a small few people or even just one person completely controlling a large group of people and getting them to do things that are against their own character, getting them to do things that are against their own morals, against their own ethics, and things like that. And we see that play out in the world today, all over the world, in all kinds of different countries, which is why I feel like an important part of what traditional school is missing is making sure that we're teaching our kids how to think critically, that we're teaching ourselves how to think critically, and that we are careful of the agentic state, because the only thing that keeps authority in check is the people under that authority being willing to check that authority, right? That's the only thing that keeps authority in check. And so I think it's very important to have a few people in any group that don't mind checking authority. And that's when I build my leadership team, when I build my staff in here, that's the main thing I focus on. I want them willing to check me, right? I want them willing, I don't want yes men. I want people willing to check me, willing to question me, willing to have a debate with me about why I chose to do something in a certain way, because through the discussion of it, maybe I change my mind, maybe I don't, but at the very least, I refine my idea, I refine my opinion, and I refine my argument. And all of those things are very important to the idea of critical thinking as you build your own opinion. So here's the thing. If you find something boring, if you find something somebody is saying is boring, then you're boring. Because you can learn from anybody, right? All you have to do is figure out whether to learn from their mistakes or learn from something wise they say, or whether they're correct. But you can learn from anything and you can learn from anybody if you learn how to think critically about things. So like I said, that really comes down to making sure that anytime you're approached with a new idea, that you look at every side of it you can. You look at all the opinions about that subject you can, not just the ones you already believe in, not just your family, not just your friends, but all of it you can. And then you actually spend a few days mulling it over, right? Thinking of all the bad things that could happen, all the pros, all the cons, all of that. That is critical thinking. And at the end of that, you are able to form your own opinion, so you don't just turn into the sheep that over 80% of the adults I meet are, right? Where they just believe whatever it is everyone around them believes, and they don't bother doing any research or anything to put together their own opinion. Now, I understand why people do that. It's actually wired in our brains. We are tribal social creatures. So it is wired in our brains to, sorry, I had a comment over here, made me chuckle. It is wired in our brains to fall in line and fit in order to save time without doing our own opinion work or our own critical thinking, so that we can save time in forming opinions and move on to other things. But I think it's important that we learn to control that biological urge to do that, so we make sure we're actually forming our own opinions. Yeah, but I talk a lot. Too bad. This is my life. You don't like it, get off it, right? So By the way, I want to thank all our viewers anyway. My Teammate Talks podcast, the last one I did, had over 10,000 views worldwide. Very much appreciate it. I had a few before that to hit the 50,000 number. That's really exciting. But like I said, all I ever do is get on here and talk about character development and talk about parenting and talk about kids because that's what I do. I do behavior modification. I teach martial arts and parkour. I work on behavior modification. I work on character development, and I help people learn their critical thinking skills. So, like that, there's an easy way to learn that through martial arts, for example. I don't give people the answers right off the bat. I will teach them a technique. I'll show them how to do it correctly. I'll show them how to get the power out of it and all that. But then when they get into their sparring, it's up to them to figure out different ways to use it. I might show them a few setups and things, but they have to think critically about the pros and cons of each technique, the pros and cons of each setup, whether it's takedowns, kicks, punches, whatever. And they have to be aware of when they are open and other people can take advantage of that. And then they have to learn how to close those things off. This teaches critical thinking skills to make them kind of figure it out on their own. You know what I mean? It's an important part of learning, in my opinion, because the thing is, the greatest skill you can ever learn how to do is learn how to learn. Once you learn how to learn really fast and really well, you can learn anything. It doesn't matter what you're interested in. It doesn't matter what you want to do. You can succeed at anything, right? So you got to make sure that you check yourself. Are you check your own thoughts, check your own beliefs? Are you only believing or thinking that because everyone else told you to, or is that really how you feel based on a deep thought process on each side, right? Or have you spoke to people who have different opinions than you, see why they have a different opinion and what they think about it before you choose how you feel about something yourself? See, critical thinking skills are just gone these days. And I think a lot of it has to do with our lack of attention span. Like I'm reading these comments over here on my live YouTube. Last time I did a live on YouTube, I got a great bunch of great comments. This time it's people that can't listen more than 5 seconds to decide whether what I'm saying is important or not, right? So I want you watch this later, watch it now. Leave in the comments your thoughts. Do you think, how would you feel to find out that your kid grew up to be someone who would do things that are immoral, wrong, whatever it is, just because someone in authority told them to? How would you feel if your kid went out on the street and hurt people just because an authority told them to do so, even if that was completely undeserved, right? How would you feel if someone came to your house and hurt you because an authority told you to do that, right? That is the danger of the agentic state. That is the danger we run into, and why I feel like it's important that everybody knows that study about the agentic state and just how many people, if given an order from an authority, will absolutely do things that are completely detrimental, unethical, immoral, and just plain evil in some cases. Like the test they did it on involved killing the plant guy in the room, and he would fake his death and all that. They would fake his death with heart monitors and the whole things, and the people would still sit there and continue to shock the supposedly dead body, right? That's just nuts to me. And how many people did it is crazy. And guys, this ain't a new study. This was done back in what, the 1940s, I want to say? Maybe it was the 60s. Somewhere between the 40s and the 60s, right? So I think this is something we need to get a hold of, because if we constantly are trained to just take everything someone tells us as pure truth, then we form our opinions based on what the people around us tell us. And guess what that makes you? That makes you easy to control. That makes you easy to manipulate. See what I'm saying? And it's like if you let the words of other people control how you feel, then anyone can control how you feel except for you. And it's the same kind of thing here. If you let the words of other people control your opinion and your actions based on those opinions, then who's really in control of your actions? That's what I'm getting at. Who's really in control of your actions? Because me, I want to be in control of my actions, right? I want to be the one that chooses. I want to choose based on my own morality, based on my own ethics, based on my own sense of right and wrong. I want to be able to choose. But in order to do that properly, I can't just listen to a few people who have the same opinion and then go, oh, 3 people gave me the same opinion, so I'm going to keep that opinion. No. Instead, what I've got to do is I've got to listen to people who have all kinds of different opinions. And then I got to think about the pros and cons of each of those opinions and how they work together. Put it all together into a big picture, and then you can get an idea of how you really feel about something, right? But you have to actually put thought into it. And that's something I hope to encourage in my students, my martial arts and parkour students. That's why I like to ask a lot of questions. Like in Discipline Week, I like to ask a lot of questions about how to show discipline. In Compassion Week, I like to ask a lot of questions related to compassion, empathy, and things like that, because I want them to think for themselves about how they can apply those things in their life, especially if it's important to them, right? Those things are really important. So that's really all I wanted to talk about today. I want to talk about the agentic mind state. Wanted to get on here and talk about the importance of critical thinking skills, which I think are becoming more important every year. So, make sure when your kid's asking for help for something, of course you can give them the answer eventually, but my favorite thing to do is lead them to the answer. So I answer questions with questions when I'm in teacher mode, right? So if someone asks me a question, I will answer it with a question that will lead them in the right direction. A couple few questions to lead them in the right direction so they can form their own conclusions. I don't want to tell people how to think. I don't want to tell people what to think. I want people to feel safe being themselves. I want them to feel confident and comfortable enough to build their own opinions, to be themselves, right? And I think we all want that for our kids, don't we? I know I do. So, critical thinking skills are important because if they aren't able to hear all the different sides of an opinion and form their own opinion, then they're going to spend their whole life basing all of their decisions and actions on what somebody else told them to believe, on what somebody else told them to do. Call me a control freak if you want, but I want to have more control over my life than that. I want my son to have more control over his life than that. And these things are really, really important. So that's about all the time I got. Remember, you can catch me live on YouTube at our Peaceful Warriors. Actually, I think you have to search Oakley Kicks, but Peaceful Warriors Martial Arts page. You can catch me live on our Facebook page, Peaceful Warriors Martial Arts as well. I do this podcast mostly for parents of students who, just want to get a little deeper into what we're teaching or have a say and how we approach different things. So I appreciate y'all, you guys watching, commenting, stuff like that. Lets me know what to expect, what to plan for, what you guys would like to see out of what we teach, things like that. And I really appreciate it. Of course, you can always listen to these videos later, both on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts if you search for hashtag Teammate Talks. That's the name of the podcast. So till I see you guys again, you can meet me here next Saturday, probably around 3:30, 4 o'clock. I'll have a much different topic, though. So until I see you guys again, be the best teammates you can be and be the best at being you.